All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Looks like my the camera a little blurred. But anyway, thank you guys for being here. I found Novations, or Novations found me about a year ago. And I love them. It's another strategy for you to build wealth, to create cash for yourself. It's another strategy to put in your tool belt. I've used Novations primarily when the numbers don't work out for a wholesale deal. And so I want you to learn about Novations across the country. A lot of wholesalers have turned to Novations as a primary strategy. So I see a lot of really colleagues of mine. I'm in a mastermind. A lot of colleagues of mine are that's all they do is Novations. And with Novations, because of the way it's set up, you can double the money that you would make on a wholesale deal, as long as you have a willing and able seller, motivated seller. They've got to be a willing participant. I do want you guys. We are recording this, and this will be loaded up in on our community page. But I do want you guys to take notes. Because especially for the real estate agents, there's lots of opportunity out here that we're passing by. But if we understand, like, every opportunity that comes may not fit perfectly for a flip or a wholesale deal, but might fit perfectly as a novation, that's more deals that you can do yourself, or more deals that you can partner with someone like me who just loves novations. And so if you guys have any questions, I don't anticipate a lot of people on. So if you guys just want to unmute yourself and ask questions, or if you want to wait until the end to ask your questions, that's fine as well. All right. What is novation? What is novation? And so the way I look at novations is as it relates to wholesaling. Now, most of you guys on here hopefully know what wholesaling is. Wholesaling is putting a property under contract below market or at market at a bargain price, and then assigning that contract to a cash buyer that's going to either renovate the property and sell it. So there needs to be enough equity in there for them so they can renovate it and sell it, or they're going to renovate it and hold it. That's what wholesaling is. So you've got to assign that contract still low enough so that the cash buyer has room in there to renovate that property, pay closing costs, and sell that property at a profit. The difference with novations is you're still going to put a property under contract, but you're going to, instead of assigning that contract to a cash buyer, you're going to assign that contract to an end buyer, someone that's going to live in the property, not an investor, an end buyer who's going to buy the property, probably off the MLS, and live in the property. That's the difference. Here's where I want you to take notes. As a wholesaler, you're going to, generally speaking, you're going to put the property under contract at 65% of the after repair value minus repair costs as a wholesaler, and then wholesale that deal or assign that deal to a cash buyer at 70% of the after repair value minus repair costs. Now, you should be making about 5% of the after repair value, 5%. The difference between the 65% that you put it under contract for and the 70% that a cash buyer is going to buy it for, 70% of the after repair value minus repair costs, is 5%. So take a shortcut. So to understand what your profit is about 5% of the after repair value. So let's just take 400,000. Let's say that you find a property and the after repair value is 400,000. Once it's completely renovated, it's you can sell it for 400,000. On a wholesale deal, that 5% is $20,000. It's $20,000. Write that down. On a novation, you can buy that property at, I'm just going to say 84% instead of, you can put on the contract for 84%, which means it gives you a lot more room to work with. If you're working traditionally, if we're negotiating with a seller and the seller doesn't allow us to put on a contract for 65%, we might walk away from that deal. Now on a novation, we can go up as high as 84%, and this is how that works. And so 84% of the after repair value minus repair costs on a novation. And so with the 84%, there's 16% left. 10% of that is our profit. So 10% we're looking at to be our profit. And so now we go from on a $400,000 property, and we can go over at the end if you guys have time, real numbers. But 10% of ARV on a $400,000 property is 40%. So you just on the same property, because it's a novation, you've doubled your money because you're selling it to a cash buyer. So 10% of the 16% that's left over is profit, and then the 6%, to make it 16, the 6% is on a novation we're paying. So we're going under contract as the buyer, but realistically we're acting as, throughout the transaction, we're acting as a seller. And so we leave 6% in there to pay for the seller's transfer and recordation taxes and title charges. That's about 2%, and that's on the high side. DC, it's about 1.5%, but I'll err on the high side, so that's about 2%. And then I'm baking in 4% for real estate commissions, 2% to the buyer's agent, 2% to the seller's agent, and that can fluctuate. That can be less, especially because of the new contract, the new rules. But I'm baking in 4% for commissions, two and two. Now, if you're an agent, of course, you're not necessarily going to pay yourself, which means you're only going to pay, let's just say 2% to the buyer's agent. Now you could probably buy that property for, even a little higher than 84%, 86%. If you have any questions on those numbers, just let me know. But because you're going to go in, or I'm going to go in, or we're going to go in and do the renovations, we're going to be able to sell it at market market value, or after repair value. Hopefully, I'm not confusing anyone. Also with a novation, for me personally, on a novation, I don't want to do any renovation. I only want to do cosmetic renovations. And so kitchen, bath, flooring, paint, and really that's it. And so we just completed the renovation of one this week, where it's in Trinidad, and the renovation cost us $22,000. And we did all new flooring, so it was carpet, LVP. I'll tell you a story about that one in a minute. So we put LVP on the steps, on the main floor, and all upstairs. So we did flooring, we painted the entire house, we put in recessed lighting, we just spruced up the kitchen. So it had a Formica countertop, we put in granite, didn't have backsplash, we put in backsplash, kept the appliances. Our contractor did a wonderful job painting the cabinets. So the cabinets were like an oak brown, and painted them white, and they look brand new. You'd walk in there and think that they were originally white. And so it came up to about $22,000. Those are the renovations that that I want to do on these types of deals. Now, one mistake that I've made in the past was thinking that traditionally on a novation, you can just clean it up real good, and you still can, but clean it up real good, just well enough to put it on the market and sell it below the ARV, after repair value. I made the mistake of thinking that that was going to work. And so on one of my properties, I left out not putting in central air. And because of the hot summer that we just went through, property got a lot of activity. I still was able to list it low, but because of the hot summer that we went through, house didn't sell. And so now I'm in the process of putting in what's called mini splits, basically ductless central air. They're called mini splits into the house. It's a row house in Petworth. And so so when you're doing novations, just be careful. And so the lesson that I learned is I want to renovate on a level that all of the properties in the neighborhood that have recently sold, they sold for ARV. ARV. Keith, put your phone on mute. Maybe I can put it on mute. All the properties in the neighborhood that sold for the highest amount, the after repair value, I want to renovate to that level. And if I can't renovate to that level, then I probably, and the numbers don't work, then I probably won't do the deal. Unless the market changes, we go into really a seller's market where I can just clean it up real good and then put it on the market. But that's what a novation is. You're going to have to do just a little bit. And then there may be some situations that I've seen, I haven't experienced it, but I've seen some others. They have done novations and did absolutely nothing to the property. They were just able to negotiate a deal with the motivated seller where they just allowed them to come in and put it on the market without doing, because the house really didn't need any work. All right, any questions so far?
Hey, Greg, when you figure that that repair cost, is that the same 20% like you use on the Mayo for wholesale?
Probably, but I think that if you're going into the house and you don't have a contractor with you, if coach, mentor, your partner's not with you that knows, then I would base it on that the 20% rule.
Okay.
My preference would be for you to go in with someone that knows to get real numbers.
Got you. Thanks.
All right. All right. Identifying suitable properties. And so we want to find motivated sellers who can't sell their properties. And so one of my deals that I've recently have done was on the market. One of my agents had the property listed on the market, couldn't sell. She wanted the seller to get another opinion. So she asked me just to go over and tell the seller why it hadn't sold. I think it had been on the market for about 60 days. And so I said, sure. So I went over to the property, walked the property with the seller, and I said, I'm just going to be brutally honest, totally transparent. The reason why your house isn't selling is because it's dated. And I said, it needs some of these things to update the property. And she said, Mr. Bennett, I don't have the money to update the property. Now I went in there honestly, with no intentions on wanting to buy the property. I just totally went in there to do, just to help my agent, help get this listing sold, hoping that whatever I said, the seller would be willing to do, even lowering the price. She said, I don't have the money. And so I just said, well, look, I have the money. If you move out of the property, I'll renovate the property. I'll promise you a certain amount of money, and I keep the rest. We'll partner on this deal. And she said yes. And so the amount of money that I promised her that she would make, she needed some of that up front so that she could move. First, she needed first month's rent security deposit. She was moving, she was moving to a rental. She was just tired of living in that house in that neighborhood. And so I gave her the money um, to move out that went towards the amount of money on the contract that I had promised her that she would make. So she moved out and we renovated the property, and and this was all like recent. And so it's been on the market, I think, for one day or today. I think it went on the market today. But she was motivated. And so we're looking for motivated sellers who are having a hard time selling their house, sellers open to creative financing. And novation is creative financing, just like the subject to is, just like owner financing, just like a lease option. So it's seller financing and properties that require minimal rehab or repairs. That's what we're looking for. And so now the question is, where do we find those properties, um, or those motivated sellers? And so I think that we find them some of the traditional ways, through direct mail. Another one that I have, uh, another investor sent out postcards, did a postcard mailing. This lady responded after talking to her. He called me and said, I don't think I can handle this. I think it's an ovation. I'm not sure, but can you just call her and just talk to her? And so I called her. Um, and indeed it was, or it is, an ovation. And he got that through postcards, so through direct mail. And so direct mail is good. Um, Real estate agents are great. Getting properties off the MLS, especially expired listings. 80% of the time when a listing expires, it expires because it's overpriced. The other 20% is doesn't show well. And so oftentimes when they don't show well, it's because it needs updating, and sellers they don't have the money to do it. And so getting properties off the MLS, or soliciting properties, especially expired listings, are a great way to find these deals. If you don't have the MLS, don't worry about it. You can go to Privy, and we have a link for Privy, and that's the MLS. Cold calling, all the traditional ways of finding investment opportunities, except for auction properties. Novations don't work well with auction properties because, generally speaking, a bank owns that property. The bank's not going to allow you to go in there and fix it up and put it back on the market. And so, but all the traditional ways, you guys have been looking for opportunities. I think the biggest thing is when the opportunity presents itself, understanding um, what a novation is, just like you guys understand what fix and flip is, what buy and hold is, and what wholesaling is. You can then determine whether this property constitutes a wholesale deal, a novation, or a flip. We looked at a property last week, and it was a total gut. It was in DC. It was a total gut. Um, that was a flip or a wholesale deal. Actually, I looked at a property probably a month ago now in Congress Heights in DC Southeast. I looked at that property. It was going to take too much to renovate the property. It was a probate deal. Seller was not going to go for an ovation. I didn't want to flip at that time, a month ago. I didn't want to flip the property. Didn't want to flip it. And so it was a wholesale deal. And so I wholesaled that property. But had it been that it didn't need as much work as it did need, because it needed everything. And if the seller would have worked with me, I probably would have done an ovation on that deal. The other thing that innovation helps with is, as opposed to a flip, I compared it to a wholesale, but as it relates to a flip, the only money that you're worried about is the renovation costs. You don't have to worry about getting a hard money lender to finance the acquisition and the rehab. You're only dealing with rehab. And on a traditional flip, you're buying the property from the seller. That's closing costs that you pay. When you buy it as a buyer, you renovate the property and then you put it on the market and you sell it. That's another set of closing costs you as a seller. On a novation, you only have one settlement when you sell the property. Now, I put liens on the properties. Um, Once we go under contract, it's in the contract, it's in my contract that I'm going to put a lien on the property. I don't want them selling the house up from under me. I want to make sure that, I get what's negotiated. And so I put a lien on the property. It's in the contract that they know I'm going to put a lien on the property. And then when the house sells, I just release the lien. All right. Any questions, you guys?
Yeah, Greg, I have a question. So, that novation contract is different. But I have a property I just put under contract, but I used your regular contract. Do I need a different contract for that?
You put it under contract as a wholesale deal or
No,
no?
it's a novation, but I used your regular contract, sales contract.
Yeah, and so the contract that I use now works for both wholesale and novations. So on that contract, it says I have a right as the buyer to assign that contract or the right to novate that contract. Novate means to replace. And so I have a right to replace myself as the buyer, and or I have the right to assign that contract.
Right. On the one you talk, so you speaking, so the one that I use is okay, you saying?
No,
Oh, it's not.
no,
Okay.
you've got to
All right.
add some language in there that
Okay.
says that you might novate that contract, replace yourself as the buyer,
Okay. I need to
No.
get a copy of that if I
and
can
sell
from.
to and sell to a third party.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
I can get a copy of that, that'd be great.
you have a wholesale contract.
Yeah, so and also to the group, I just put my information, my contact information in the chat. Anybody who wants to do some private lending, please call me. I just put in the chat.
So to Dana's point, and so I hope you guys understand that on a novation, not only can you make more money, double the money, you're going to go from a profit of 5%. We teach 5% to a profit of 10%. So you're doubling your money on novations. Now, novations do take a little longer. A whole typical wholesale deal, you're in and out maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe 4, but on average 3 weeks wholesale. On a novation, it could take 60 days. So you need time to renovate the property. And then you need time to put it on the MLS and get a end buyer. Then that end buyer needs time to get their financing. So it could be somewhere around 60 days. Now, most motivated sellers, depending on the situation, they don't care. They just want the house sold. So the lady that I gave the money to move out, she just wants a house sold, and it wasn't selling. And so as investors, it's our responsibility to solve problems. And so we're using Novation to help solve that problem. Now, on one of my deals that I recently did, as I said, all I have to do is worry about the renovation costs. That's it. That's all I have to worry about is renovation costs. Don't have to worry about acquisition because we're keeping the seller's loan on the property. I was able to get a private lender, to Dana's point, his question, so that I'm doing this property without any of my own money. I'm doing a property without any of my own money. So private lender will lend, you could give them 10%. So if it's a renovation, depending on how you finance it, and it needs 20,000, 30,000, whatever, let's just say 30,000. If you give them 10, you can give them a straight 10%, which is 3,000, or you can give them traditionally 3% amortized over a year, which means if you're in and out, let's just keep the math easy. If you're in and out in 6 months, you're not giving them 3%. You're giving them $1,500 because you're giving them their money back in half the time. So it'll equate to 5%. And so, or I could get and I'm happy to do this. I could get someone like Dana. Dana puts up the money. I found the deal. I negotiated the deal. I put them on the contract. I bring Dana in and say, Dana, you put up the money and you just help me manage the contractors because I'm busy. I don't really have time to be going over to that property every day, every other day. You put up the money, you help manage the contractors. I'll split the money with you. And so that's always an option as well. And so on these, a traditional flip in the DMV is we make about $80,000 to $100,000. On Novations, we're making like 50,000, 60,000. And it's only because I look at my numbers at about 10%. To be honest, it's a little better than 10%. So so we're starting one tomorrow where the ARV is 650. But when I ran my numbers on that one, so 10% is 65,000, which is great. But when I ran my numbers on it, we're going to make about 80,000. But generally on an Novation, you're not making as much as a flip, but you're not going through as much. You're in and out. Your risk is a lot lower because you're not really borrowing money from like traditional financing. And that's for all of those reasons is why I like Novations. And I've leaned in that direction. Now, will all of my deals be Novations? No. Like I said, I just did a wholesale deal. But it is first and foremost on my mind. But if the deal just doesn't work, I'm happy to wholesale, kind of happy to flip. At my age, I started flipping properties in my late 20s. And so for me personally, going through like permits and contractors and inspections and all that, it's kind of wearing thin a little bit. But if it's a juicy deal, then I'll do it. But I love Novations. Any other questions, you guys? All right, step 2, establish an seller agreement, outline the agreement, negotiate the terms. And it is a negotiation. So especially those that are on here, I haven't even looked to see who's on here, but those are on here, adhere to all of the negotiating that I've taught you over the years, especially my coaching students. Okay. All right, Carlos. I see you, Carlos. Carlos Carroll's in the house. All right. Raul,
It's multiple Carloses on here.
you the only Carlos.
Hey, don't let him steal my name like that.
All right. Step 2. How do I get? Let me see. Carlos threw me off. All right. We need to get an agreement. We've got to negotiate. The better we can negotiate, the more money we make, and the more and less risk we're at. If we can negotiate a great deal. So we want to adhere to the numbers that I just talked about. If you adhere to those numbers, and I can break them down for you even better. But if you can adhere to those, then you're going to win every time. secure an option agreement that allows you to market the property. And we'll talk about that I think in the next slide. Ensure the seller understands the novation process and consents to it. So here's what I say, you guys. After taking a look at the property, I'll say to them, Mr. and Miss Seller, for what you want to sell it for, I'll ask them, do you have an idea of, Mr. and Miss Seller, do you have an idea of what you want to sell the property for? Or generally speaking, I'll go in and already knowing. And I'll say, for what you want to sell the property for, it's not good for an investor. But if we partner on this house, if we become partners, I can make this work. And the way it works is you already have the house. I'm going to promise you X amount, and I'm going to renovate the property on my dime. I'm going to spend the money. I'm going to renovate the property. I'm going to take care of the selling process. I'm going to deal with the contracts. I'm going to deal with the real estate agent. I'm going to pay the real estate agent, and I'm going to pay the closing costs. So I get them to understand. I keep everything above board. I am totally transparent. I don't try to hide anything, and don't try to hide anything. It's gonna bite you in the butt in the end. Just be totally transparent, because real estate investing is a numbers game. You're not going to get every one, but if you're totally transparent in the beginning, you don't have to try to cover yourself in the end. And if it looks like you're trying to cover or hide something, they're not going to want to do the deal, because, this is a means to an end. It's a solution, but they would rather go a traditional way than do something creative, but knowing that they have to do something creative in order to sell the house for what they need to sell the house for. So be totally transparent. I like to use the words, I'd like to partner with you, be your partner on this. And then everything, is written in the contract. All the terms are written in the contract, and they feel comfortable with it. The house has to be vacant. So if it's not, you've got to find a solution for them to move out. Do you have someone that you can move with, or you have a place you can move to? I have another one that's a rental property. So the challenge is getting the tenants out. And so I drafted up in that one, I drafted up a eviction letter and sent it to my client, my seller, and she sent the eviction letter, but that was after stopping the foreclosure. And I'll tell you about that one in a minute, but I stopped the foreclosure just so that we could even do the deal. All right, so how are we going to market? How are we going to find a qualified buyer? In most cases on a novation deal, you find your end buyer in the MLS. Probably 80% of the time, it's the MLS. And so that's where you're going to find your end buyer. You want a buyer that's going to pay top dollar ARV. You want a buyer that's going to pay, what the market calls for a house that's renovated. And of course, the higher they pay, the more money you're going to make, because what you promised the seller is fixed. It's in the contract. It's fixed. Anything above that is what you net minus your expenses, and your expenses are the renovation costs and the closing costs. Now, you've built in all of those in your numbers when you're running your numbers. Your numbers, 84% of the after repair value minus repair costs. Your repair cost is built into that number. Your closing cost is built into those numbers, and your profit is built into those numbers, that 10%. So, but if you can do a little better, then you make more money. And it seems like all the deals that I've been doing, I've done a little better than 10%. So you want to market it, MLS, social media, your buyers list. If you're an agent, the agents in your office, that's where you market the deal. And if you do a good renovation, if you market it, if you list it correctly, then it should sell pretty quickly. And again, learn from my mistakes. Try not to cut any corners. Like I cut a corner where I didn't have to. I cut a corner where I had already budgeted to do something and I just didn't do it, thinking that I didn't need to. And that's just a lesson that I learned. All right, step 4, negotiating the novation agreement. So you want to draft that agreement up, ensure all parties understand what's going on. You've got to let the buyer's agent know, the buyer know. I try my best, honestly, not to have to deal with agents, only because agents don't understand real estate investing. But I've built in, commissions in there so that if I do, the money is there. Include all the clauses to protect your interests and the seller's rights. And so I do have a novation agreement between me and the buyer, me and the seller. It does say that I can replace myself in the contract with another contract. And the other contract I simply use is the purchase and sales agreement. But you can draft up a purchase and sales agreement that's not, I'll just say board approved, but I've just been using the board approved, like for those in the DMV that are agents, a G-Car contract or a MAR contract. That's all I've been doing. But in the contract, I initially go over the original contract with the seller, and I just make sure they understand every paragraph, every line. I invite them to have an attorney look at it, and some have, or a friend or family friend or somebody. I invite them because I don't want any trouble in the end. Because Novations is fairly new. It will be household. Everybody will know Novations another year or two, but since it's fairly new, it's just a new concept. But because the concept is so powerful for both us as investors, and it solves a problem for the seller that we see across the country, a lot of sellers are doing it because they make more money. They've got to wait a little longer, but they make more money. But as investors, we double our money as well. All right, step 4, close the deal, coordinate with the title company. So you are, or I am, a line item on a settlement sheet, on the HUD 1, Alta. We're line items. Now you can break up those line items into 2 parts if you want, one for you renovating the property and one for your profit, which I've done, just so that it doesn't look like to the buyer. It's all transparent. It's all right there. To the seller, it just doesn't look like I'm making all this money. And in some cases, more than them. So sometimes I'll just break it up into 2 line items. You want to use an investor-friendly title company. We've been using Smart Settlements now. And so they know all about novations. But you primarily, you want to make sure that your line items are on the settlement sheet, and you want to control that whole thing. And you let the seller know that you're controlling everything. There's a lot of investors across the country. I don't do this, and I don't know that I would recommend this, but traditionally on a novation, they get the seller to sign a power of attorney, allowing you to sign for them, sign the listing agreement, sign the purchase and sales agreement. I just don't want that liability, so I don't do that. I try to bond with the seller from day one, so they can just follow what I ask them to do, so that when it comes to that, they're happy to sign because now they know that they're a lot closer to getting their money and getting the house sold and getting rid of that situation, and so that they can move on with their lives. Traditionally, you guys might look at some other videos that will say, get a power of attorney to sign everything for the seller. And you can do that if you want to. I don't want to do that. I don't do that. All right. Again, make sure that the seller gets their funds. You make sure that you get your funds. The title company needs to have your wire instructions so that they can wire you your money. I've seen situations in my career on wholesale deals where the wholesaler didn't check the HUD 1 at the time, the HUD, to make sure that their assignment agreement was on there. They got a cash buyer that they didn't know, and they never got paid. Long story short, they never got paid. Cash buyer never paid them. It wasn't on the settlement sheet. They wasn't once they got the cash buyer to sign the assignment agreement, they kind of went ghost, expecting everything was going to get taken care of itself, and they didn't get paid. So make sure it's your job to follow that transaction on a novation all the way through to the end. Post closing, I'd like to make sure that like all the electrical thing, everything that a seller would be responsible for, I like to do that. I like to do that just to show goodwill, get more referrals from everybody in the deal. Ensure that the buyer gets all their documents, seller gets all their documents, all those things. All right, common pitfalls. Discuss potential issues like financing, following through, which happens. So I tell the seller, financing could fall through. We may have to get an extension if things don't work out, things like that. And so you want to talk to your seller about home inspection items. Your seller is going to tell you what the payoff is. You make sure that you get a payoff statement from the bank, because as an example, you're promising the seller that they're going to get 75,000 because they tell you that their payoff is 200,000. So you're saying, okay, 275, I can work with that because I'm going to renovate the property and sell it for 425. And it only needs $20,000 worth of work. I'm giving them basically 275, 200 to pay off the mortgage and 75. And then the payoff comes back at whatever, 210, 220, 230, but you've promised them 75,000. And so all that has to be put in the contract. And so that they know I'm basing these numbers on what the payoff is. You get a payoff before you get started. You get a payoff, and you get the title company to run title. Make sure that there's no judgments on the property, no liens on the property, and if so, you work them out. Carlos, you have a question?
Yeah, are you also doing a home inspection before you purchase from?
You do a home inspection, but it's a light home inspection. Since it's equivalent to when we're flipping a property. And so when you're flipping a property, do you have a home inspection, or you just kind of have your contractors go in there and just check out everything and give you an estimate?
I mean, I've done it both ways. On stuff that I don't feel confident on, I have paid for some full appraisals. I mean, not appraisals, but inspections.
Yeah.
But typically, you go through, walk with your contractor, and that's it.
That's what I've been doing. I haven't had a home inspection, but I think that that's a good idea. I do think it's a good idea. That's a good question. That's something to consider. All right, let's see. So you want to make sure that you do your due diligence. I don't want you to start spending money on renovating the property, and then you get the settlement, you've got an end buyer, get the settlement, there's more liens on the property than you knew, or the payoff is higher than you thought. They're still thinking that they're going to get the money that you promised them. So you've got to work those things out before you get going. All right, to recap. Go ahead.
Those are good word, because sometimes we can get so involved in small details we can forget. It can be very costly. That's really good reminders and information that you just gave out. I really appreciate that.
And so, yeah, and so I guess the bottom line is don't be in too big of a rush.
Right.
Being too, because honestly, to get you could get a payoff in 24 hours. And a title company can check title, takes a day to check title. So don't be in too big of a rush. You want to make sure you check out all of those things. I mean, even a listing agent on a traditional, if you're listing a property on a traditional residential sale, I teach my agents to get a payoff. You're the listing agent, get the payoff, because you just want to make sure that all the numbers are right. All right, identify a suitable property, and we talked about that. And it's generally speaking, what I've seen is a suitable property is one where the seller is willing to negotiate at the formula that I gave you. Now, that's my formula. I made that formula up. I'd never seen anybody, but by sticking to that formula that I came up for myself, it kind of safeguards me into knowing that I'm buying a property right. Just like the Mayo formula, Mayo maximum allowable offer, 65% of after repair value minus repair costs. I needed for myself, I needed a formula so that I knew I was buying a property right. And so I took the closing costs, seller's half of the transfer and recordation, title charges, and commissions, and I kind of bundled them up into 4%. Into a total of 6%. Total 4% for commissions, 2 and 2, and then another 2 for their half of transfer and recordation and title charges. Now you may say that's high, and so that's fine. That's fine, because in DC it is high. Like I said, transfer taxes are about 1.5 in DC, but I want to stick to my formula so that I'm buying it right. And if my profit goes from 10% of ARV to 12% ARV, I'm happy. Establish a seller agreement. We have the novation agreement. Find a qualified buyer. And so make sure that they're qualified. You want to get a lender letter, talk to the lender, and then negotiate the deal. Close the deal, distribute the funds, and then the post-closing procedures. Real quick, I don't know what time it is. What time is it? Okay, I got 10 minutes. All right. So Summit Street, some of you guys saw Summit Street. And so that's the one where I went and looked at the property. It's in Trinidad, Northeast, DC. Went and looked at the property for my agent. I told the seller, you need it work. It needs to be updated. I said I can update it. She agreed. And so far, so good. Everything has worked out according to plan. We went in there, we tore up all the carpet. It was old carpet. I think she must have tried to clean it. We tore it all up, steps, all upstairs. And so the whole house, we put in I think a real nice LVP, luxury vinyl plank. We painted. She had recently got it painted, but it was a light blue color. And so we painted all the trim white, and all the walls, it was bare paint. I think it's a toasty gray color. We put in recessed lighting and granite and painted the cabinets. I think some of you guys that have seen the property, what do you guys think about that property? Anybody? Dana? Keith?
I thought the
Yeah,
rehab was
I
great.
thought it was a nice, neat job, Greg. That
Yep.
was you in and out. I thought it was good.
And so one other thing I failed to mention is my preference is to hopefully do a renovation where I don't have to pull any permits. That's my preference. Now, as time goes on, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get away with that. Might have to pull maybe an electrical permit or HVAC permit. But my preference is trying to do these renovations without a permit. Now, to be honest, there's one or two things that I did on Summit that constituted a permit. I didn't, hopefully y'all keep this to ourselves. I didn't pull it. I didn't pull an electrical permit, which I should have. But we were in and out, and the way the house is situated is kind of hidden. My fear always is that a neighbor is going to call and say, they over there renovating that property at 123 Main Street, and there's no permits in the window. That's always my fear. But we've been able to get in and out and with no issues.
So on Summer Street, Greg, I was a little freaked out because I couldn't see the HVAC system.
Of course, Dana. Dana's a HVAC tech specialist guru. So he was freaked out. It's there, Dana. Trust me, it's there.
Yeah, I felt some air come from somewhere.
It was cold. It was cold in there, right?
It was cold air coming from somewhere.
Brownsville, an investor, this is the one investor contacted me, didn't really know what to do with the property. I said, well, let me take a look at it. I called her and basically told her, she said, well, the house is getting ready to go to foreclosure. I've got tenants in the property and I don't know what to do. Property goes to auction next week. I looked it up, Googled the address. It was going to auction like in a week. And so we went back and forth, negotiating the deal. We finally signed a contract. And I think I put it under contract for 275. I think 275. And then she didn't have any money to stop the foreclosure. Going to foreclosure, that close to a foreclosure, you can't stop it with a contract. 2 weeks or more, a lender may allow you to stop with a contract. The only way you can stop a foreclosure that close to the game, to the end, is a bankruptcy. So her credit was already bad because of this house, and later she told me a whole bunch of other things. So she was open to a bankruptcy. She didn't have the money for a bankruptcy. So in our contract, I had promised her a certain amount of money. Actually, in this one, I only promised her $25,000. So I promised her $25,000, and I said, I'll stop the I'll pay. So I called my bankruptcy attorney, Benny. And Benny, on the day of the foreclosure was at 4 o'clock on a Monday. She kept telling us it was Tuesday. Benny found out it was Monday at 4 o'clock. I had another investor call me and knew that I was working on this project. So I put it on Facebook, and he figured out which one it was. And Benny filed the paperwork and stopped the foreclosure at noon or at 2 o'clock. And so for a bankruptcy, stops everything. Bottom line is, it stopped it. Guy called me laughing and said, "Oh, you just," because he was going to try to bid on it. He was actually going to the auction to bid on it. And then this is what he told me, you guys. Now I'm thinking, so this is Crownsville, it's Anne Arundel County. I don't really do much in Anne Arundel County. I'm thinking it's going to sell for about $450. When I was talking to him, I just threw numbers out. Yeah, if it works out, I'm selling it for $575. Just throwing numbers out. He says, "No, Greg, it's not going to sell for $575. You probably get $525. I was like, $525? Whoa. I'm on a contract for like $275, which includes her $25,000. And a tenant's in there. So if a tenant's in there, it tells me that it's probably just going to need cosmetic work. It's not a house is so in bad disarray that no one can live there. And I drove by the house and I see people out in the yard, so it can't need that much work. Like I can't wait to tell the story about that one. And so that's the one that I drafted up what's it called? A 30-day notice, and she sent it. Actually, I gave them 45 days since we stopped the foreclosure. And hopefully it's a happy ending. They move out, we go in, to renovate it and sell it for $525. First Street is the property we're starting tomorrow. Some of the guys in the coaching program seen that house. A wholesaler brought me that deal. All of these deals, you guys, didn't happen overnight. So First Street took up by at least a month before I was able to get that one under contract. So that one needs, so Dana, well, I got him down to 35, but the contractor gave me an estimate on Monday of 40,000. So he's going to put a wall upstairs to make one of the bedrooms into 2 bedrooms. He's going to do all new flooring, paint, a lot of landscaping, new kitchen, new bathrooms. He's going to gut the bathrooms, the 2 bathrooms. Gave me 40,000. I got him down.
This is the Crownsville project?
No, this is First Street.
Oh, really?
Hey,
Who's doing that? Who
you
gave
saw
you that? Who
First-
gave you that price?
Huh?
Who gave you that price?
I'll tell you later, but
Okay.
the one that you
All
don't.
No.
But that's going to be a good one. So that one is 500,000. So I'm under contract for 500. House 2 doors down sold for 650. And so on that one, 35,000 is the renovation cost. And so the numbers just work. And then Petworth is the one I told you, probably made it like 1 or 2 mistakes. I didn't put central air in there, even though it was in the budget, but we're taking care of that now. All right, any questions, you guys? That was an hour's worth of knowledge. Any questions? One big thing, this is a lot of information in this last hour. I'm happy to look at your deals. I'm happy to partner with you.
Hey, Greg, Brownsville, is that,
Go ahead. Who's that, Keith?
Yeah, he went out.
yeah, I was just saying, Greg, the Crownsville opportunity, you helped that lady out so much that you could have future business that's going to come your way when you least expect it. I think that's the other benefit from doing these deals. You mentioned it earlier that they have a problem. We're helping them to solve their issues.
Right. Go ahead, Matthew.
I appreciate this hour, man. I guess one of my main questions is, so I understood novations to be a legal process, but it sounds like it's more of a kind of falls in the line of the creative financing family. Is that sounding right?
Well, all real estate transactions, in my opinion, are legal. I mean, you have a contract. So it's all a legal process, but yeah, a lot of people would consider novations creative financing, because you're not financing the deal in a traditional way of getting either a hard money lender or traditional financing. You're leaving the mortgage on the property and you're just renovating the property. And so, yeah, it does fall into in my opinion, the category of creative financing.
I see. Appreciate you.
Yeah, Greg. So, if you were trying to like not go through with all of this and you just wanted to assign these deals, you would just advise us to negotiate down to like 80%. or like 79 or something like that.
And yeah, and be happy with 5%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Or whatever you can get, whatever you can
yeah,
get. But
that's a good point. Just know as a wholesaler, you're probably going to get paid in the end. But yeah, absolutely. In the end, meaning traditionally as a wholesaler, you're going to get paid in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. On a novation, if you assign that deal, I mean, I guess there could be a situation where you could get part of your money up front and then the other part in the end. We could definitely work something out. But to your point, yeah, I mean, as long as you leave the 5% in there, and as long as, you know, we could buy it at the, say, 84%, absolutely. So you bring up a good point. So that gives you a little more room, Carlos, to negotiate if the negotiations aren't going good at 65%, 70%, 75%. It gives you a little more room to work with. That's a good point. All right, anybody else? All right, so you guys stay in contact. Keith, if you've got that that link to our free community, go ahead and plug that in. You guys, if you're not part of our free community, we have these masterminds every week, absolutely free. We've got a Q&A every Tuesday. Everything is free. And so if you're not part of this group, and most of you guys are, click that link and join us. We've got deals that come through the group. We collaborate through the group, and you just never know what being part of like-minded people can do for you. All of my contact information is here. Follow me on Instagram. That's the best place, Greg Bennett Invest. But my phone number, my best email address is here, thebennetteam@yahoo.com. You can even follow me on Facebook. Facebook, I'm actually the Bennett Team. But my goal, one last thing I want to mention, you guys, is the ultimate goal, in my opinion, as a real estate investor, is to buy and hold real estate. That's where you really become wealthy. It helps you with your retirement. It helps build generational wealth. It supplements your retirement. And so what Novations, what they do for you is give you the cash to then go buy and hold. And so you can do 1 or 2 novations and then buy and hold a property, whether it's a residential property, whether it's a multifamily. Ooh, I like this drop. Whether it's a short-term rental, mid-term rental, whatever it is, that's what novations are, to give you the cash to build the wealth to then buy and hold. And so my goal for everybody is just to buy and hold one property. And I've seen throughout my career where one property that you buy it right, pay it down, pay it off, and of course your tenants are paying it off, makes a big difference in your life. Once you start to get to the age of retirement, that one property just makes a huge difference. And in our area, in the DMV, we see properties doubling in value in 15 to 17 years. And so start now with your buy and hold strategy. And you'll see that over a period of time, I've got tenants now or houses now where the tenants have almost paid the houses off. And so ultimately, that's what you want to do. And Novations can help you do that by giving you the cash to then buy and hold. And that's ultimately what you guys want to do. All right, you guys, any questions, comments? Everybody good? All right, thank you guys.
I have a question, Greg.
Go ahead.
Hi, it's Alicia Mathis. When you were speaking on getting the title company, I guess to run title, I guess we'll have to pay for that, or no? Okay.
Well, they'll do it.
They'll do it. Okay.
obviously, if the deal works out, they're gonna want you to, do the deal with them.
Yes. Okay.
You
But-
said that Smart Title is the name of that company?
Yeah, Evelyn. I'll get you guys the information. If you guys want information on anything, just let me know. Here's all my contact information. You can even contact me within the community if you're not part of the community. We've got, I don't know what's next week, but we've got another great mastermind next week, Q&A on Tuesday. We're out in the field all the time. And so my goal is to help as many people get that one buy and hold. That's my goal. Just get that one. That's going to change your life. It may not seem like it, but it's going to change your life. And when you get it, hold on to it. I've made the mistake. I started buying properties at 23 years old. Year out of college, I started buying. My goal at the time was just to buy one property a year, buy and hold. And I was doing that. And then I got the bright idea of selling a couple to buy multifamily, and I just never did. But don't get me wrong. I mean, I do have a number of properties, but I want you guys to buy at least one property, hold it and hold it forever. And if you're ambitious, buy two. And if you're really ambitious, make it make a business out of it. Set high goals for your passive income. But use Novations, primarily use wholesaling. And if you're really ambitious, use flipping as a way to get the cash to then buy and hold. I kind of stopped teaching flipping because a lot of people lose money on flips. And because they go at it on their own. And with flipping, it's got to be like a perfect and exact science. You got to buy it right. Financing's got to be right. Renovation's got to be right with no headaches from the contractor. You got to list it right, stage it right. Just too many things that have to go right. And so, but I still flip. Don't get me wrong. But I don't want you guys losing money, making any mistakes. If you do flip with someone that has some experience. So that you can gain the experience on flipping. All right, anybody else, you guys? All right, you guys. Thanks a lot, you guys. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of this. Take care, God bless, and I will talk to you guys soon. Good
All
night.
right, take care. Thanks a lot.
All right,
Okay.
thanks.